For women, buried in the same stretch of sand, less than 500 feet apart. Nobody reported them missing at the same time. Nobody connected their names. Nobody came looking. And for over a decade, the man who put them there drove past that beach every single day. This is the Gilgo Beach killer. And this is Cold Case Exploit. For 51 in the morning, May 1st, 2010, a 911 dispatcher picks up the line. What follows is 20 minutes of the most disturbing audio in this entire case. State police. Yeah, there's somebody after me. I'm sorry. There's somebody after me. Where are you? There's somebody after me. Okay, where are you? Where are you, ma'am? I don't know. Her name was Shannon Gilbert, 24 years old, a young woman from upstate New York. She had traveled that night to Oak Beach, a wealthy, gated community on the edge of Long Island, surrounded by wetlands, swept by cold Atlantic winds. She was there to see a client, and something went terribly wrong. Shannon was panicked, disoriented. She ran from house to house in the dark, pounding on doors, screaming that someone was trying to kill her. Residents saw her. They opened their doors just long enough to be confused. But before police could arrive, Shannon Gilbert vanished into the marsh. What was she running from? And how does a 20-minute distress call end with no rescue? Those questions would haunt investigators for years, because what they found next would change everything. Before we go any further, if cold cases like this one keep you up at night, hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video, so the algorithm pushes this story to someone who needs to hear it. And drop a comment below. Tell me, do you think this killer worked alone? Let's get into it. December 2010. A police officer and his canine partner, a dog named Blue, were conducting a search near Gilgo Beach, along Ocean Parkway. They weren't looking for what they found within a single stretch of sand, less than 500 feet, for sets of human remains. Not Shannon's. For other women, bound in burlap, hidden in the brush, like they had never existed. DNA identification brought names back to the silence. Melissa Bartholomew, 24 years old, from the Bronx, missing since July of 2009. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 25, from Norwich, Connecticut, missing since 2007. Megan Waterman, 22, from Maine, missing since June of 2010. Amber Lynn Costello, 27, from Babylon, Long Island, missing since September of 2010. Same location, same concealment method, same burlap signature. This was no accident. A serial predator had been operating, and no one had noticed. These women became known as the Gilgo Four. But behind that label were 4 lives. 4 stories. For families left shattered in the dark. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was a poet, a single mother from Connecticut, who filled journals with raw, honest emotion. She had turned to escort work years earlier, out of financial desperation. It was a decision she confided in her sister. She disappeared in 2007. Her family waited 3 years, with no answers. Megan Waterman was 22, and already a mother. She had traveled from Maine to Long Island, trying to earn enough money to start a new life for her daughter. Tough but kind, her family said, doing the best she could, in a world that offered her very little protection. She was last seen leaving a Holiday Inn in Hauppauge in the summer of 2010. Amber Lynn Costello lived just a short drive from where her body would be found. She was an artist. She painted during breaks from rehab. She laughed easily. She made friends quickly. She still believed things could get better. The night she disappeared, she had been contacted by a man using a fake name. Someone precise, controlling. A man who requested her by name. Specifically, she walked out her front door and never came back. And then there was Melissa Bartholomew, 24 years old, dreaming of opening her own salon. She was careful. She screened clients. She took precautions. But in July of 2009, Melissa vanished. And what happened next? Crossed into something almost unimaginably cruel. Melissa's teenage sister started receiving phone calls. From Melissa's phone, the caller was calm, cold, mocking. He described what he had done. He asked if she was as pretty as her sister. The calls kept coming. For weeks, the family handed everything to police. Investigators worked with Verizon to trace the calls, not to a single address, but to high-traffic areas of Midtown Manhattan, near the Port Authority, the Empire State Building, Times Square. The caller moved constantly. He never stayed on the line long enough to be traced in real time. But from those recordings, investigators began building a profile. A man who didn't just kill. A man who enjoyed what came after. By March and April of 2011, 6 more bodies had been recovered in the surrounding area. Among them, the dismembered remains of Valerie Mack and Jessica Taylor. Also recovered, the remains of a young child and a young Asian male, found dressed in women's clothing. Years later, DNA evidence would connect the unsolved 1993 murder of Sandra Castilla to this same web of crimes. A young woman found in a wooded area of Southampton, Long Island. Her case had sat cold and unsolved for over 3 decades. The variation in victims, the span of years, the different methods of disposal. It raised a question investigators couldn't ignore. Was this one killer? Or more than one? But as disturbing as those discoveries were, what was happening inside the investigation itself? Maybe just as damning. At the helm of the Suffolk County Police Department during those critical early years was Chief James Burke, a rising figure in law enforcement, known for his iron grip on the department. When bodies began surfacing along Ocean Parkway, Burke made a decision that would later be called one of the most consequential failures of the entire case. He blocked FBI involvement. He insisted Suffolk County Police Department could handle it alone. That refusal delayed forensic analysis. It stalled interagency cooperation. And in those lost years, victims' families waited. The silence wasn't just haunting. It was enforced. Families accused law enforcement of treating their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, as less than. Shannon Gilbert's case became the symbol of that failure. Despite a 20-minute 911 call and eyewitnesses watching her flee in terror, police publicly floated the idea that her death was accidental. Her family never accepted it. Justice, it seemed, moved slower for some than for others. If you're still watching at this point, drop a comment right now with the words, "I'm still here." Let's see who's truly following this story. Because what comes next is the part they never saw coming. Years passed. Frustration built. Cold cases aged. But technology caught up. A dedicated task force, armed with new investigative tools and renewed determination, turned to genetic genealogy, the same method that cracked the Golden State Killer case. By analyzing DNA recovered from crime scenes and cross-referencing it with public family databases, investigators began tracing bloodlines, narrowing the field, closing in. The trail led to one name. Rex Heuermann, 59 years old, 6 feet, 4 inches tall, a licensed architect based in Manhattan, running his own firm, working with high-profile clients. To anyone looking from the outside, he was the picture of unremarkable suburban normalcy, commuting to work, raising a family, living in Massapequa Park, just miles from where the bodies had been buried. When his name surfaced, neighbors struggled to make sense of it. He was kind of a nerdy kind of guy, odd, but not a troublemaker. Soft-spoken. We spoke regularly. I'm surprised at the violence. But investigators were not surprised. They had spent years building this case. Burner phones linked to Heuermann had been used to contact escorts. Cell tower data placed him near the locations and the approximate times of the victims' disappearances. He purchased SIM cards anonymously. He used virtual private networks to mask his digital footprint. And in his search history, investigators found a phrase that removed any lingering doubt: how to dispose of a body. But that wasn't the most disturbing discovery. Inside his home, investigators found a basement vault. Inside that vault, more than 270 firearms, multiple burner phones, and something that stopped everyone cold: a typed murder manual. Clinical, methodical, precise. It included step-by-step instructions. Pre-clean the weapon. Remove identifying features from the remains. Use kitty litter for disinfection. This was not a man who acted on impulse. This was a man who planned. His wife and children had reportedly been out of town during the periods prosecutors believe the murders took place, a detail investigators viewed as anything but coincidence. His wife filed for divorce shortly after his arrest. By all accounts, she never saw it coming. "He's a demon that walks among us," one prosecutor stated. A predator that ruined families. Rex Heuermann was arrested on July the 13th, 2023, at approximately 8:30 in the evening, outside his office building in Midtown Manhattan. He was initially charged with the murders of the Gilgo Four. Prosecutors have since added charges for the murders of Valerie Mack, Jessica Taylor, and Sandra Castilla. 7 murder charges. In total, as of now, no trial date has been set. The legal proceedings remain ongoing. The prosecution is expected to present digital evidence, forensic analysis, cell tower mapping, and mitochondrial DNA expert testimony. Person charged. In connection with these 7 murders, Shannon Gilbert's remains were found in December of 2000 and their grief. Maureen Brainerd Barnes's daughter, Nicolette, was just. The Gilgo Beach case is not just the story of one killer. It is the story of a system that failed women it deemed less important, of an investigation stalled by ego and institutional dysfunction, of families forced to fight for years simply to be heard.